So there was this guy called Charlie, and he wanted to be a brewer. You know, it was his life dream, his whole life. He just wanted to make beer. He just loved it so much. He wanted his whole life to revolve around it, you know. So off he popped to beer school. Which now the problem is, no such thing as beer school. Well, there might be. I'm not sure. To my knowledge, there isn't. Let's just assume, for the sake of the narrative, no such thing as beer school. So he looked around everywhere. He went to all the breweries and he asked all the master brewers. He would go up to them and he would say, "Master brewer, please take me as your apprentice. I wish to know the way of the beer." And all of them would turn him down. They would say, "No, we're sorry. We're full. We have apprentices up the kazoo. I'm sorry, you'll have to go somewhere else to learn about beer." And hearing this, Charlie was shattered. He was absolutely devastated, you know. So much so that on the side of the road he broke down crying, you know, lamenting that his life dream, his life goal, it would never be fulfilled. It was very saddening for him. By chance, you know, very convenient, a master brewer, George, let's call him George, a master brewer was passing and he saw Charlie crying out for the fact that he loved beer so much and he couldn't get to do it. And George, the brewer, he was moved by this. And so he decided to train Charlie. He took Charlie under his wing and he decided to train Charlie up. And so George taught Charlie everything he knew. You know, he taught him about hops, about barley, about yeast, you know, beer things. And Charlie loved this. He grew and he learned to know a lot underneath George. Now one day George had pressing matters to attend to. His wife was dying, yeah, or something. But he couldn't leave the brewery. He couldn't leave it because at the time he was currently brewing a batch of beer for the king, and a bad batch meant certain death. Boom! Plot twist. We're in ancient England. Ooh. So I mean, his beer was unfinished. I don't know. He still had to add the yeast or something. You know, something that would take a long amount of time, and he couldn't just do before popping off to see his dying wife. So you know. So on one hand, he had his dying wife that he really wanted to see and say goodbye and everything. And on the other hand, he had the beer that he had to brew for the king, otherwise he would die, because the angry king would be like, "Oh, this beer is horrible, bring me whoever made it," and then he would kill him, or something like that. And he was, you know, he was torn between these two options. Should he go and see his wife, his dying wife, who he hasn't seen for like a month? Yeah, that's even more sad. Or does he stay to make the beer for the king and, you know, to make sure he doesn't die? He didn't know what to do, and Charlie saw this. Charlie saw George was torn between his two options. So he came up to George and Charlie said, "George, go to your wife. I'm ready now. I can make the beer. You've taught me a lot. I can do it. I'll make the beer for the king." And you know, George was moved by this. You know, he put his hand on Charlie's shoulder and said, "Charlie, are you sure you're ready for this? You have to do it perfectly, otherwise it means certain death." And Charlie, he just stared straight back into George's eyes, and with unmovable conviction, he said, "George, after everything you've taught me, it's the yeast I can do.